God forbid you stand out or, quote, want to be seen or be full of yourself. What else am I supposed to be full with, by the way? Like, but I don't know. I've just been questioning a lot of these things, but being brave enough to wear color, and that's clearly a choice on your part, because you're not just like, well, I happen to have this color. It's a pair of pants that's like kind of pink. Right? No, you're wearing colors. You're saying something. So before we started recording, I was looking at Danielle's top, and I just was so excited about the colors, but especially how they like blend with the earrings. And for some reason, I keep doing this with my hands when I do it. It feels very delicious to me.
So
If you can see it.
these earrings are my newest invention. I'm calling them the fringe belief earrings. Just not invention. I'm just making earrings with tassels.
What?
Like
Yeah.
my newest thing that I've added to the knitting cult family, you know.
Yeah.
All right, so I went out in this top this weekend. Okay. And I need to show it because it's a very short crop
Oh,
jacket
it's a crop.
with
Okay.
long sleeves.
Oh, with a
okay?
bell sleeve.
So I was wearing this and then some high-waisted sequin black pants. And
Cute.
right, it was. And I went out like that, right? And so my child was out at a party with like school friends, which we live in a neighborhood that, for reasons that have to do with racism, black codes, etc., the school across the street is very much more white, or that neighborhood that the school is in, right? So so I'm out at this neighborhood bar that we have, which became quite a hangout for non-white and specifically black people in this neighborhood. Unsurprisingly, it's closing Wednesday. Anyway, so we're out there and everybody was just giving me compliments, right? It was just, oh my gosh, you look so great. This is amazing. You know, and it was great. And I have trying to heal my body image post-cult, post-military, working on the white supremacy of it all. And was like, this summer, like, I am a couple sizes bigger than I was before. I'm not letting that stop me. Like, I'm still gonna wear my croppies and do my thing.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but then it was just like, then I had to leave at 10 o'clock at night and go across and go get my kid. So I was like, that's it. I'm just going like this, right?
Yeah.
And I did. And it was just very silent.
Oh.
And, oh, hey, where you been? And just like, nobody said anything bad, right? But it was just like, it was just so white.
Yeah, like sterile almost, like like boring. Like, you know, when I talk about like best case scenarios in whiteness, is that's what you get. Like, whoa, great. No one does anything extreme ever or like makes anyone feel anything. Like, because that's
I think that's such a good way to put it, right? It's like my outfit made people feel some kind of way.
Yeah.
And it was very different in these two different scenarios across one literal street from each other.
Huh.
And then we went back to the hangout, and like my 9-year-old rocked the house with karaoke, and we just like continued to hang out in this very affirming community. Literally one of the things I literally said to my husband as I was walking away, I was like, we have to find, because I said it's closing, right? I'm like, we have to find another space to hang out that's not dominated by white people, because it's like been so good for us. Like, I'm so sad about it. But anyways, I was walking back that night and I felt like, I was like, this is another crack in the whiteness. And I was like, God, I want to talk to Rebecca, like off recording. And then I was like, well, that's not very brave. So here we are.
No, and that's everything though, right? Like, that's what I'm also inviting people to when I say, you know, when you get uncomfortable, I'm like, this is what you're going to get, because you're comfortable with your prison cell. And I'm saying, okay, how about I'll let you come back. You can go back at any time. This is what I'm just saying. Look over there. Look what's happening over there. And you've been taught to like mind your own business, and looking over there and noticing things about other people is dangerous because that might make you feel something negative about your own experience. You're just not including that thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you enjoying your life makes other people uncomfortable, but it has nothing to do with you. You sparked something in
Yeah.
them, you triggered something in them, and
But
that's what I tend to like
it's so funny you said it
want
just
to
like
touch.
that. It's so funny you said it just like that, because someone who's a Brazilian just literally asked me today, like, why are Americans so like strange? Like, you'll be talking to them, they just ghost you, you know, nobody knows each other in the neighborhood, you know, and
Right.
I always talk about this as elevator culture, the difference between Brazil and the US. Like, in the US, we get in the elevator and we kind of like, and this I think is probably a white America thing too, right? But we kind of just pretend that the other people don't exist, or like we're in private when we're in the elevator, right? And like in Brazil, they just share the elevator like any other shared space. It's just like, hey, bom dia, you know, good morning, what's up, blah blah
Yeah.
blah,
Yeah.
you know. And it's like, it's so interesting to me to go back and forth between the two. And why, you know, just strikes me that this is a white culture thing is because I do often have lots of great conversations in elevators with Black women about my outfits. So, um,
This is what I'm saying.
but when
Right.
you said like they're afraid of feeling something, like I think that's really what it is, right? We don't, because I was literally explaining to her that like, yeah, Americans like, and again, probably white Americans, right? Suburban Americans like don't want to get to know their neighbors, because then like, what if you have an issue and then it's uncomfortable,
Right.
you know? And
It's
it's like,
like,
what if you do
what if,
look and then you have to get involved?
right. And the only time that they experience what I've noticed, a sense of that camaraderie, is in the us versus them. If someone's in the neighborhood and you need to protect your community because of this suspicious person, you know, if there's a Black person, what I'm saying, if there are Black people around, then all of a sudden you're like, I'm protecting my neighborhood. This is my neighborhood. These are my neighbors. You live here. And, you know, when I real in my comment section, would be like, white women only, quote, had each other's back once they identified someone who seemed to be getting harmed by me and my asking them to be uncomfortable, or like my saying no or something. Then, well, maybe she did. Any other time, you cared nothing for each other. You never identify with each other. You know, you don't see each other and go, oh, I know something about this person. If I see another Black woman in the elevator, I know that's a Black woman. I'm a Black woman, and we know this. We're not lying about, we're not gonna deny that. You guys get in an elevator and you just see another being? I don't know. Because there's this like, we don't associate with our white womanness, but we do associate with our white womanness when, I'm not sure, right? Because I'm not white. I don't have that perspective, but it's like something where it's like the trigger that needs to be touched on what there's like sleeper cell energy, that like you need to push the nice guy to show that, is he really a nice guy, or is he a nice guy because everything is calm and settled and you're performing the way he expected, and everything is good.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how do you react when someone pushes back against you? I don't know.
Yeah.
But once that is okay, because when you go out in your colors, you're saying, I'm okay with myself. Or like, that's basically it, right? Because
I was joking the other day that everything about my style is just intended to telegraph that I did not vote for Donald Trump, you know?
right, right. And but at the, you know,
But
when you start peeling all that stuff back,
yeah, but it's also
you're okay
like
with being seen.
it's color, right? It's color, it's joy, it's, you know. And it was funny actually, because when I was trying to like find an outfit to wear for like a date night, I was like, but I just like, I wear all my great stuff all the time.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. There should
like
be special occasions, to
it,
be
you
honest.
know, it was funny to me. I was like, none of this actually feels like that quote unquote special, because I'm just always like putting together these great outfits and like
As you
having
should.
fun with it, you know?
Right.
So much just like joy being created, and for me, this really ties back to like color is resistance and like just like existing as a person of color in America is resistance. But for like white
Right.
America, like I'm sure
Right.
you've noticed the aesthetic is being pushed to like beige.
Nope.
Oh my God, I have a sad beige kid. Like,
Yeah, that's
they're like, they, they all getting blush pink manicures, like it's just
yeah,
very like homogenous
because
right now.
it's also like kind of wearing all black, like in New York. It's safe, but it also makes you so. I can't imagine wearing white and beige all the time. You have to be so hyper vigilant. Do not get a stain on that. It will be very
Ooh,
visible.
that's
Everyone will
true.
know. It restricts how you operate. It's like operating with stray hair a bit. Like it changed. You think about that, it's
Interesting.
restrictive to wear all white or beige or something. And
Yeah.
God forbid you stand out or quote want to be seen or be full of yourself. What else am I supposed to be full with, by the way? Like, but I don't know. I've just been questioning a lot of these things, but being brave enough to wear color, and that's clearly a choice on your part because you're not just like, well, I happen to have this color. It's a pair of pants that's like kind of pink. Right? No, you're wearing colors. You're saying something easily, naturally, in a way, and that is the work that has to be done, and people can see that. Black women understand context. We know this. We know when you choose to do this that it's for you, and we love to see it. Yes, more. That's literally, but it takes
And it's like
indoctrination and being uncomfortable with your
that
other stuff
was the
first.
difference in the response, right? Like the response from black women was like, "Yes, get it, more," right?
Yes,
And
yes.
then the response from the white crowd is always kind of like, "Be a little bit less."
Like they don't know what to say, and that makes them uncomfortable. And I realize that's a lot of what the people had issues with me when I was saying the black and white thinking thing. It was like they just didn't want to be made to think about, and I already did it
Right,
by
right,
existing and saying what I think. And they were like,
right.
but I shouldn't have to. Well, too late. What? I mean, so
Um,
don't. I don't know.
So, by the way, I wrote the note for my book on black and white thinking, right? Because so I can go through and I can get rid of all the notes to it, but then when I quote people, like someone's going to say that, right? So the first time someone says it, I'm going to have that pop up note, but that's like in the
Mm-hmm.
page, so you have to read it. And like when I wrote it out, right, I was like, okay, so as White Women Whisper and other scholars have talked about, right? Like this language is uncomfortable, it's hierarchical for a reason. And when you talk about white equals good and bad equals black, and
Yeah.
so we're going to introduce red and blue thinking. And you immediately see that it's like now when you say red and blue, you understand they're polar opposites, but it doesn't immediately come with a hierarchy. Like one is right and one is wrong.
Right.
Right? Like
Exactly.
it's
And like
so good. It's so good.
the
You're
the
obviously getting credit for it. Like
oh
it's
no,
yeah.
which thank you. Right. Which
And then shades of purple, right? It's going to get messy. You're going to
exactly.
live in the real world.
And there are so many more shades of purple that I can think of than gray. I mean, kind of. You know what I mean? Like boring again. Like, oh, shades of gray. You mean dark gray and light gray, and then in the middle, medium gray? The amount of purples there are. And they're all valuable in their own way. It's not like lighter or darker.
I
It's
was
that's
also
very binary.
I was also just thinking of like mixing an outfit of a bunch of different grays versus mixing outfits of a bunch of different purples, which I really like to do.
Right? I mean, which one of those slaps, right? Like which one of those hits hard? Um, let's talk purple. Also, I think it's good practice and it's for seeing people this way because that's what I need white people to start doing is humanizing people of red and blue. Like it's seriously, guys. The whole you're doing the thing, and so when red and blue it came out, I was like, oh, that's perfect. And now I want, without even saying whatever, but they're all people. And if you want to deem one side good and one side bad, you're kind of doing that thing, and just rebranding it. And that's always been my thing. It's like rehumanizing people, not
Yep.
just seeking vengeance and revenge and all that stuff on owning other people. Like I'm gonna own them. Like well, as a concept, if you're ever like, I want to hurt people as a group of people as a concept, I don't know. I don't think that's great. I would say, or
Yep.
like, I'm going to do something because it would make those people so mad. You know what would make white men really mad? If you paid Black women to just speak their thoughts that they didn't like. That would make them so mad. Oh my
It
goodness.
does.
But
It
that's
does.
not. Yeah, but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about like, I'm going to wear a shirt that makes fun of the thing they make fun of. And then I don't know. Boring again. You're still centering harmful behavior and then like doing it back. Oh, it's like the death penalty, which we've talked about before. Like, let's
Yeah.
kill people in the name of being mad about people who kill people. It's like,
Yeah.
what do you,
Hitting children to teach them not to hit. Yeah.
right,
Just
right.
like no,
Yeah,
doesn't really
we
work
know
that
this
way.
when it comes to dogs, and I'm gonna just say that, right? If you understand when it comes to dogs that it is wrong to do a positive reinforcement works better than punishment, then what are we treating people like this for? It's because that subhuman thing, that scarcity
It's
thing.
the dehumanizing, right? And I've been like, I've started now to tell people like the difference between Daniela and Knitting Cult Lady is like Daniela is a human that sometimes gets political and was like maybe calling the other side maggots for like a day. And then I have to turn the cult eye on myself and be like, no, that's actually dehumanizing language. It's not okay, right?
Yeah, and that's for you, right? Like,
And
when I talk about this stuff, it's just like, oh, I see it in myself. I see it out there. And I'm just saying that this is what goes on in the back of my head. And that is not judgment. That is critiquing, right? That's critiquing. And I think we should be practicing critiquing things we are going to keep, like ourselves, like critiquing people we intend to keep in our lives. Um, and if you're not planning on keeping that person, you don't enjoy that thing, why are you critiquing it? Because I'm not, just to feel better than it, moral superiority. That's very scammy. You're scamming yourself into like, this is why I don't need to change anything. Because critiquing is cool. Like, I critique shows I like, and I think it would be good practice for people to start only critiquing things they see being around them in their future somehow,
yeah,
maybe, potentially,
well,
you
this
know?
is why it's like as a reader, right? Like you only really take 3 and 4 star reviews seriously. Because like if someone's giving something a 2 or 1 star review, like they really hated it. So they're just gonna like rant about it. And that says more about them. Right. And a lot of
Yeah.
5 star reviews is people that just really loved it. So they're not seeing the downsides. Right. So, a lot
Hmm.
of readers will just read like 3 and 4 star reviews. This is why
That's
I
such a
love one of my Audible reviews. One of my 3 star Audible reviews just says, "Don't read the second half," and that's the one that always pops up because she was so mad about what I was saying about the military, but like not mad enough to tell people not to read my book. Like the
huh.
first half is still good.
Okay. Okay.
That's
That's
why I say I love it.
okay.
Because I'm like, secretly, you're really giving me quite a compliment there.
Yeah, and then that'll make people want to read the second half. What are you so upset about?
Right.
Sheesh.
Right.
People so worked up. And so I was, thinking before, I was like, this is the perfect thing for me to talk about, because I was thinking about the Byte model a little bit, because the Leah Remini Scientology series is back up on Hulu, at least for now, at least the first season. I don't know, some of it, but I remember thinking, wow, I used to be able to see it a bunch of places, can't see it as much anymore, but it's back up anyway. So I was thinking about the Byte model and how people find it useful, and I think, sure, right, I found it. I remember it was Leah's documentary series that got Stephen Hassan to me, but he went through this list of like, here are some questions to ask yourself about thing. And I recorded it and I was like, this feels like my job. And so it's how I started kind of thinking corporate culty stuff, right? Right. Now, and I was listening to his podcast. Here's the thing. He a white man. He's a what, boomer white man? So eventually I started being like, well, Okay. Right. And I got to the point where like, no, I can't listen to this white man talk anymore. Like I used it for what I used it for. It got me into that conversation. And I think there's elements of sharing your own legitimacy as a doctor of whatever. But
Yeah.
then I started thinking, right, Byte model and like behavior, that's personal, right? Information, okay. Thoughts and emotions, right? Because that's kind of, those are the last two, I believe. Information is the one we can actually, like, we should be talking about. That, hey, there's one that has influence in it. And that's why TikTok is now helping so many people get out, and YouTube videos, and
Right.
just the
Right.
CES letters or whatever for Mormons, like having
Right.
the information. It's not
Yeah.
being convinced or whatever. And he didn't, like, you could use
It's
this, right? And
it's
then go, you got psychology
yeah.
there. Okay, it's fine. You know,
But
I can critique them without throwing them away, but also
yeah. But also,
demographically.
talking to you has really helped me understand going through this, right? And so for those who don't know, Dr. Stephen Hassan is kind of like in the cult of homophobia now, saying that, transgenderism is a cult and it's not, it's an identity, right? But so, doing my own anti-racism work and working with you, I don't remember where I first heard the concept, but like the oppressor always understands, sorry, the oppressed
Hmm.
always understands the oppressor the most,
Yeah.
right? So because somebody was asking me what I thought about the Byte model, and I was just like, honestly, I said, like, if it's helpful, right? If it's
Right.
valid, it stands up to to scrutiny,
Hmm.
which is a Steve Hassan quote, right? So even though he didn't stand up to scrutiny, right? Like, if it's
Hmm.
valid, it stands up to scrutiny. But I was like, however, I have never really used the Byte model because I didn't need it,
Right.
because I had found Yanya Lalich, who's a woman, and Alexandra Stein, who's a woman, and Margaret Singer, not white feminist Margaret Sanger, Margaret
Mhm.
Singer, who's a woman. And I had found their models already to be more useful to me understanding my experience,
Useful
right?
for,
And then
right, not
and
identifying.
then as I was
Hmm.
explaining that, I was like, oh, so it's also valid that I, as a grown up child of cults who does this work, like, believe that I understand even a little deeper than some of these others, right? Because children are the most oppressed in
Right.
cults,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I understand that even at a deeper level,
Mm,
And so
mm,
that's, kind of now how I've thought about it, like what you were saying. It's like Steve Hassan is like, he's the crack in the brainwashing guy, like his
yeah.
stuff is easily palatable. He doesn't enrage anyone. That's why they put him on TV,
Right.
and it's just like when you just need something right there. And then you go a little deeper, and then you go a little deeper, and then like
Yeah.
you're going to get to my stuff here, you know, like you said, on TikTok, where we can really like get into the emotions of it all. And like not for nothing, that is how I felt about defining cults, right? Like
Hmm.
I made a little listicle, even though it made me uncomfortable because it's too shallow, right? And then I immediately set out to write a book on these concepts,
Yeah.
right, to explain like how deep they really go.
And your
And I
listicle implies more. Your
yeah,
listicle
yeah,
doesn't say follow
right.
this.
Right. But it's like I had to go deeper and like write the whole book. And then because I
Yeah.
got on social media at the same time, I realized that you got to go even deeper than a book, right? You always got to go into like hundreds, if not thousands of like personal accounts,
Yeah.
right? And all of this to get like a richer understanding of your topic.
Yeah. It has to come from hearing first person. And that's why TikTok is good. First person perspectives and experiences, not statistics, not academia, not intellectualizing experiences. Actually hearing someone say, this was my experience with this type of experience. That's literally it. And then you can open. I heard some woman say, I was however many years old, and I heard someone else say, I don't want to have kids. And that opened her mind. She said, you can want, you can You can choose these, you can choose this. That's white women. That was all. And that's because you're not talking to each other
Right.
you're having small talk. Polite says, don't offend me with all those colors and make me see you. What do you mean? Because you're not supposed to stand out, right? The right thing is to be at the right place at the blah blah blah, so no one ever sees you with everybody else. And if you choose to make this, it was kind of like me saying I'm black and
Right.
speaking about black things and not
Yeah.
from a biracial
Yeah.
lens, but just black things.
And so that phrase, by the way, is from the Army, right place, right time, right uniform. And then we also
Right.
add, and never volunteer for anything, right? Like, don't stand out. And I had an epiphany on my anti-racism journey that I was like, oh, the whole military appearance standard is about making sure that you don't stand out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they want you to look like, generally, like the big army, right, is a 6'2", white, blonde, blue-eyed man, right? That's what the soldier looks like. And I'm married to that man, right? That man exists. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that man. But every degree you are away from that, it's harder for you. You know, and I heard a black veteran describe it as you're not supposed to be serving while black. You know, you're not supposed to be like obviously black.
Yeah. Because
And
it's one thing to be black, but to
yeah,
make yourself known, to choose anything that was a choice, that's an offense to
right. Right.
the system
And
of
then,
what should be.
you know, you're not supposed to be a woman, right? You're supposed to make them forget you're a woman. And
Right.
so then obviously if you're a black woman, you have to be policing yourself on multiple fronts, right? Like, don't let them see you're a woman. Don't, you know, try to make them forget that you're black so that you can do this job.
Mm.
And, you know, what was so interesting is then I watched my husband go into the special operations helicopter unit. And I don't know where it came from, but the look they wanted was slightly different, right? Like preferred look was more like 5'10" brunette and jacked white guy, right? And my husband is not. He's the tall,
Right.
willowy
Yeah.
soldier. And you could literally see, like, he didn't fit. And it had just like these weird repercussions. Like, obviously, he was still a straight white man, you know? But
Yeah.
like, it was just, there was this obvious difference of experience for him.
But I think that's also, and I think there's a level of like, it's harder, you know, I imagine being a black woman in the military is harder, of course, by those standards in terms of being fitting in or being a culture fit. But at least with black women, you know, when you're probably in a room and you can find a couple other black women, there's an honesty happening there. And there is
Yeah, which
my
white women
understanding, like
don't have
how
at
I could
all.
see it.
Yeah,
Right.
which
And
as
so
a white
when you
woman, I did
are,
not have
and you're expected to be a
camaraderie with
minority.
anyone in uniform.
Right. And so there's like being this, it's like we talk about being the scapegoat in the family. Post family, you maybe have an easier time finding who you are because you're not being rewarded by this system. You could never be. As a black woman, you're not like almost there. All you got to do is, you know, so there's an honesty to being different. Whereas with white women, it's like that's how you get the, sorry for the hunger, all the pick me energy or like patriarchy, proximity, and like, no, I am like that. Whereas I feel like black women aren't necessarily trying to convince you, like, no, I'm just like you. Like, maybe I'll be quiet when you say things, but at least you have that. There's something outside of it. There's a community where you're not going to be as incultable, right? You're not going to, your cultability levels are just lower because you aren't trying to please. You're not, you know, it's like a trying to chase your tail contest and you guys have really long tails and it's right there and you could get it and we're like we don't have tails, so like why would we do that?
You know,
We'll run around in circles for you,
it
but
just
like
occurs to me hearing you say this that like one of the ways I survived whiteness in America was just because I'm accepted in Hispanic communities.
right, you
Like
have a connection.
other people don't have that. You know, other white
Yeah,
women don't have that. But because of my specific how I grew up, yeah.
yeah, I think I would call that like social security, but like actual social security. I realized once I typed that out, I was like,
yes. But that's what it was. That's what we
"Mhm."
were experiencing, right? Like Friday night, and like, look, my freaking 9-year-old at 10:30 at night was belting out "Taste" by Sabrina Carpenter, right? And we were like, we are not good parents, and like
According to who?
social security, like everybody was rocking out, like everybody was having a good time. Nobody was judging anyone. Our kid was close to home and was obviously totally fine.
You didn't just, whatever. You're not, everything seems fine. Like the judgment comes at certain levels. There's especially like, if you got your baby outside without a jacket and it's really cold, we're going to judge you. Having a good time out at night but listen, context matters and we see it, right? Core memories are made at whatever time they're made at. Especially with
Also,
all the things going on, we
yeah,
not in people's business like
right.
that.
We need
That's white
we need
people
these
stuff.
times. Did you see that the first woman to ever complete the Ranger like challenge was a black woman, Lieutenant Gabrielle White.
No,
She just
but
looks amazing.
am I shocked? No, like and I had made a post about I made a Patreon post about white people and like not being able to dance. Obviously, not at all, but the history of being disconnected, and I think where just like the whole what I said when I was kind of processing through it, it's like men just decided like, nope, heads are the most important because they're the top. And they're, we care the most about the top, being at the top of the pyramid, top of this is where I think from. The brain must be the most important. It's the toppest part of my head. So that's what matters. Everything else, whatever,
Right.
controlled by this. And if you
Right.
can control everything with your brain, you are better. And you're not hungry. Just tell yourself you're not hungry. It's really weird. So disconnecting yourself from your body for hundreds of years and denying things that are natural has led white people, especially from America, have no they're thinking about rhythm. They're trying to catch a beat. They're trying to find it. You can see them, their brains working. Whereas that is not where dancing comes from. It doesn't come from your brain.
Right.
It's
It
in
comes
your
from
body,
right.
literally. But centuries epigenetically covering what you are as, that's craziness. And I posted that and people made such good points. Also, that's why probably they don't like spicy foods because that brings you into your body and like dancing and singing. And why people are nervous to sing in front of people.
And it's why they will throw an absolute fit if you don't have air conditioning somewhere because it brings you into your body and you have to like
right. Never let them see you sweat. That's like a whole phrase. I wrote that down at some point. I was like, wow. So you're just
I also just want to say to my listeners, like, I happen to be a white woman that dances quite well, and you can just choose to not get offended at what she said and just understand that it's true about the majority and it's a good topic to talk about.
But see, that's what language policing and like the social policing that has gone on TikTok and in these spaces, because I feel like that's what white people take from these lessons is like, this is what you can and cannot do. And this is what you should and should not do and say. And like, I am not giving you any easy answers like that. I'm saying a lot of stuff, right? It's not always going to be a book. It's not, it is in conversations and watching conversations happen in real time sometimes. Like watching me change my mind. Some people really appreciate that. I'll change my mind mid-sentence because I'm not attached to every thought and my stance on stuff. But
well, and you have also really helped me when people are like, so what you're saying is, and I just come back and I say, I said what I said and I choose my words quite carefully, like it's right there. It's on the video.
Literally, it is playing while you're commenting this. And when people have bad faith, it is like bad faith takes that they come to you with, it's okay to push them away. But, this civilized thing and the politeness has you, it's so directional in terms of power, right? Like So someone can come into my space where I've created my own little thing, and they can like spit at me. And then when I shove them because that seemed primitive to you, and don't put your hands on people. Okay, but I shoved them away from me. They're now away from me. But I'm the problem. They just spit all over me, disrupted me, made the choice to go do it. That's consequences, right? But people want to get messy like that. They like to say, it is never okay to put your hands on people. Or you could have just ignored him. Or, I'm going to police how you respond to this, which you can, but it's already happened. Which kind of makes me think, like, there's a lot in Whiteness, there's a lot of focus on moving forward and moving on sometimes. And then also a lot of hindsight, rear view, mirror driving. But like, we should be looking back at different things like the Challenger, right? And then because when you send more people to space on live TV, did anyone get therapy after those kids who were sat in class and watched it? Did they get therapy? No, they were like, well, we just, bad, moving forward. And then when I bring it up, I'm the problem. I see this as a white people endeavor that we didn't learn from, didn't check out, didn't look into. We just like, that was bad. Anyway, it's like that's the microcosm of what you do in general. That's like how gaslighting works. You go do a terrible thing and then act like it didn't happen because it was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's the opposite of what you're supposed to do.
And that's a cult leader thing.
Right. And the rebrand and the moving forward and the replacing rejoicing about something else. That's what the head of household would say, right? Well, shut up, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You have a household, you have shelter, you have this, you have that.
And I've
Stop
told
complaining
people
about the trauma.
Yeah, I've told people this about their like abusive single family cults, right? Like when you have a family where like someone in charge just starts yelling and throwing stuff and blah blah blah, and then everyone just moves on right afterward like it never happened. Like it's its own particular kind of gaslighting.
It's like it's the unresolved conflict that now persists, right? Not the conflict itself that's always the traumatic thing. It's how it was unacknowledged, and you have to now deal with that, especially when you're young, right? But that is what America does. America says, we made an amendment and we changed the street name. What do you want from us? We gave a holiday that we'll totally, play with and be like, we took a holiday. What about, because if they had acknowledged that, we wouldn't have kept on going with the same exact system for another however many hundreds of years with just a rebrand. If there is a rebrand, you need to be worried. How many rebrands? How many names does something go by?
I don't believe in cult rebrands. Like the Children of God, literally.
There's no such thing as changing that.
Time Magazine, harem photo, right? Full harem photo. Prophet, 13 scantily clad women. Time Magazine, Children of God, sex cult, right? Then they just rebranded. And in the 90s, the Family of Love performed twice at the White House.
And see how
I don't believe in cult rebrands.
Right? Because see how if we had acknowledged that, because it's not just that, it's that you came back under a rebrand and that this was able to go on. And like, that would tell us a lot more than focusing on hypothetical harms of what could happen and how terrible and all the future stuff. Since that happened, that's how this is happening. Like, we don't need to look very far for all of the information to make sense. And that's why I don't like rhetorical questions from white people about like, how many? But it's because we keep moving on and saying, well, now that one's over. And like, you don't carry your past with you. You need to be carrying your past with you. You are the genes come from somewhere. You can't dance, not by coincidence. Like white people really think all of our stuff is just like people stuff, and everything else cultural is a them thing. Like, no. Consequences. It's okay. I mean, it is what it is. But ignoring it and acting like, well, since it was bad, it should not be discussed. Ooh. Uh-oh. That's a cult.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We talk about all that stuff.
Do you remember when this video was going around and it was just like, it just said, do you know that white people in the US and the UK send their children to school to learn to dance? And then it immediately just cut to pictures of children just all over the world on the streets, just dancing in groups and like being amazing at it. Obviously not white children, right? But just
Oh,
like, um, I mean, it's just so, and it's so true, you know, and it's so funny because even so, like, I learned how to salsa dance in Afghanistan, right? But I grew up in Latin America. So even though I was isolated, even though I was only taught choreographed white people child performing dancing, and
mm-hmm.
like was not taught to like be in my body or feel whatever, like they couldn't isolate us that much, right? At one
Right.
point our commune was right next to a club. We heard all the music, right? So it was like part of it for me was just being like, I already know these beats, you know, like these
Yeah.
beats are in my soul. And now I just need to learn to move my body.
It makes sense. And I think people confuse like what is natural, maybe not always easy, but there is a simplicity to the things we should probably be doing. Like what comes natural to you for a reason, whether it's you're just a human or you're a human who likes this. But we are just taught that we get to choose who we are
Yeah.
and what we like, and not
Yeah.
that we exist as a person who already likes and enjoy. At
Yeah.
least, you know what? That might be my
Well,
autism talking. But
no,
like, you know,
but also maybe you've just never been exposed to that thing.
right,
Or
right,
like did I tell
right,
you
right.
about the guitar thing? So I for my birthday I'm getting a guitar and I'm going to learn to play guitar while I
Fun.
like write my musical and stuff. But like I was thinking about it and I was like, why don't I just think of myself as not musical, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though I've been music adjacent my whole life as a performer. And that was when I realized, like, oh, yeah, like the boys played guitar and the girls sang and danced, right? Like that was how we generally did it. Not that there weren't obviously exceptions, but like,
Yeah.
why, right? Like, there's every indication that I could learn to play guitar. I'm clearly
Mm-hmm.
good with my hands and good with, you know, languages and blah, blah, blah,
Right.
right? So, like,
And when you
just
want to do
even
something,
the concept that I'm
you
not
do it.
musical, you know, or like
Makes no
I had
sense.
even earlier than this, like my husband was talking to someone, he said, oh, my wife and her book, and he was talking about the book, and then later in the conversation said, oh yeah, and her paintings, and he was like, oh, your wife paints too? And he just said, oh yeah, my wife's an artist. And when he said that to me, I mean, I was deeply involved with at least 4 forms of art and had
Yeah.
never like thought of myself as just like an artist,
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
and
I
like
also think the way we were brought up around those types of words, you know, it was like career stuff. An
right.
artist is a job, and these don't feel like jobs anyway. So like just the way that we
Yeah.
have taken on labels and titles, you know, because I go back and forth about
And
that too. Am I a writer? I don't know. I write, but the idea that
right.
I'm a writer,
But this
meh,
is why I like the term, I think creatives and creators. Like I
yeah,
really like it.
yeah,
You know,
that
it's
one feels right
different
to
to me.
me.
It's very different than influencer, you know,
Oh,
and
well,
when
yeah.
people call me an influencer, I don't like it. But it's like, you know, and I also use the language of I just say like I'm a entrepreneur of words and ideas. You
Mm,
know, and like
I like that.
getting my ideas into a product and out to the public started with writing them down. And so
Hmm.
that was, you know, but I literally remember being like, huh, I'm going to go down as an author. Like, that's weird and not like the way I think of myself. You
Right.
know, it's like I can do all of these things. Like, I can do,
You're not that.
right.
You're Daniela,
Yeah.
right? And in the artist, like you're an artist. Yes, that because that makes sense. But that's just not how
Right.
our society uses those words.
Yeah, but also these ist words, right? Like
Yeah,
scientist, right? So my husband is
yeah.
about to graduate with his bachelor's in plant science and go straight into his master's. And so every time I call him a scientist, he's like, well, almost. And I'm like, methinks actually the whole point of the term scientist is like anyone that does the scientific process, anyone that does the science, like, is
Yeah.
a scientist. And anyone that does the art, like, is an artist. You
Yeah.
don't have to have sold it. You don't have to be making a living by it. Like, you can just make
we're like, and that's why I make up
things.
my own words. That's why I like word worker and edutainist. But even edutainist, I was like, but that says it's for me, to me, right? If I was an edutainer, then that's in my head for other people. And especially because I make up words and then white women come and be like, oh, really? You think you're this thing? I made it up. White woman whisper, you think you're lying about that? I made it up. I decide what it is. But like, but knowing those things, you just realize when you're Black, you start you have to believe in it more than the word. I don't know.
I think it's so interesting that as soon as
I
you
like creative.
define yourself as what you are, right? People come and want to be like, oh, so you think you are, right? Or, oh, like, who made you? And I see this in the way people
it's like, who gave you permission?
police themselves. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And the way that people get mad at you, like, if you write a book, right? And unless you can prove you had this entirely unique experience, they're like, well, what gives you the right? And I said something like this to my agent, and he just goes, Daniella, the First Amendment. Like, the First Amendment gives you the right.
No one
Right?
asks these
And
men.
like, right, exactly. And I saw it happen with my audience when I went from calling myself group behavior gal, where everyone was like, oh, really? You think you think you are, like, all those things you were saying, and then called myself knitting cult lady, which I assume everyone just goes, yeah, well, I can't do that,
What can I say about that? It's like wearing your color, right? It's like
Right.
they kind of feel like, well, you just want us to say something, so we're not going to say something. But like, you're not centering them when you wear colors. But in whiteness, that's like the white narcissism of, like, you're doing this because you want us to say something. You want us to see you. You want, as if those are bad things, because they would feel bad if they were seen as supply for someone else. But like, you're just living your life. But that's what whiteness looks at Blackness like. It's
like, so whiteness wants you to do it on their terms, right? And that's also why insurgencies win. That's why guerrilla tactics win, right? Like, I keep telling my audience, like, if the military fired one shot at Americans, like, we would just respond and smash them down so hard. Because the reason guerrilla tactics win is because we're not fighting you the way you want to be fought, right?
Right.
So in Afghanistan, right, America, cults always promise space travel, right? And I think America's really built its image on, we own the skies first in World War II, right? And then we own space. And so, we'll put a base deep in the mountains that has to be resupplied every 2 days for fresh water. And it has to be resupplied by 2 helicopters that fly low and slow. And guess what? Helicopters fly at 14,000 feet. You know how high these mountains are?
higher?
And so, right. And so all of a sudden, your helicopters really, really lose their power when people can shoot down at them. Right? And then all of a sudden it's seen as like, hey, that's not fair.
Like, what are we doing? Like, it just reminded me of like the Mount Everest stuff, and then like, we're putting a flag on this, and guys, people are dying. Like, I don't know.
Well, and I mean, this was kind of the whole point. Like, what are we doing in the middle of these 2 mountain passes in Afghanistan with a base anyway? Like, why are we even here, right?
Yeah, the whole Department of Defense. I was like, maybe we should stop being so terrible. People wouldn't want. But like, they're not even attacking. So just like Black people, they want to be left alone. All those people want to be left alone. And we're like, well, they hate us. So we have to keep defending ourselves from how much they hate us for being there. Like, what?
And this is what's so funny, right? Like, the rest of the world right now is just disengaging, right? They're just like, we're going to just go buy our corn from India instead of from you, right? Like, Donald Trump's like, I own the world. And all the other world leaders are like, okay, we're not going to come to your party anymore. You know, like,
Yeah, but that's because what do you mean? But a narcissist is like, why aren't you engaging with me? Why aren't you calling me back? And that's why white women need to stop arguing with someone who just sees you as supply. And you are. Like, you have limited time, energy, and attention, and you spent all of it yelling at someone who oops himself regularly, allegedly. I don't know. Like, you're not. It's not energy well spent, in my opinion. That's why Black people are learning new line dances, and we're like having all these great, moments. Because it's not that you don't care, but you critique, you critique, you critique. You're not listening to critique. I don't know. I just doing something different, and it can be as simple as that. So I don't think it's for everyone to wear color. Maybe they have social anxiety or they have something. I don't know. If you find your thing that
right.
comes naturally and easily, but it's like you start to go like, why can't I do this again? What? Why did I tell myself this was inappropriate? Be unprofessional. Well, I
That's
advocate for
so,
being
I mean,
unprofessional.
that's so funny because I have two things in my life, right? Like I heard a lot of, people from the cult that I grew up in say like, oh, well, I didn't join the army because I never could have gotten a secret clearance. And they'd be like, wait, how did you get a secret clearance? I was like, I applied. I just didn't tell myself that I couldn't do it, Turns out government loves kids from cults, right? But like, uh
Yeah.
and then the other one is traveling with knitting needles and crafting stuff, right? People are always just like, huh, I just
Yeah.
always assumed you couldn't take knitting needles on a plane. And I was like, yeah, and I just don't assume that. And like sometimes, like when you're traveling through Greece and Turkey, they will take one crochet hook from you at every TSA stop. But like most of the time it's not an issue. And so I get to do my crafts on planes because I bring them. And I don't
Right.
just
And
assume
like,
I won't be let through.
and how much of that is ruling people's lives and keeping them from stuff? But then it's like that self-imposed suffering, sis. Self-imposed suffering. I'm trying to get y'all to stop because there is a lot that is going on and is bad and stuff, but like
Oh my God. Have
you
you already
hearing
done?
about it isn't the thing. It isn't but there is this, like, my attention is the same thing as my experience type of, like, I don't know. I don't know. The conversations are important, and I think that it's not something you can read your way through, so I don't really know. I mean, this is how we're starting. I
Well,
guess it's like listening to conversations is
you
something
know,
too.
it's even like, okay, so right now Donald Trump has put a executive order basically saying he wants to use the military, right? It's not going to get out of court, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not going to happen. But I keep saying, right? Like I just can't. I was like, am I even going to get on live today? Because every other comment is going to be like, what about the new EO? What about the new EO? What about martial law? Right? Like they're starting it again. And
Hmm.
so I did get on, but I just started being like, tell me what you're scared of. What are you scared
Yeah.
of?
Yeah.
National level military operations, not going to happen. What are you scared of?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I think that's really good
borders
because I don't
closing.
think.
Here's how that can't work, right? What are you scared of? Like, just keep going. Just like drill down
Yeah.
to the level. I don't know if you've ever heard this thing of like 5 whys, like when you're going through like a
I don't think
deconstruction
so.
or a really deep thought of something, and ask yourself why, and then why, and then why, and then why, and then why, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like 5,
Oh,
and
that's
just
not
like
how people live their lives.
just but like no, no, no,
Oh, no.
that might just be some of us,
Clocked
but
me. Got it.
just the like drill down to the level of what you are afraid of, right?
Yeah.
So example, okay? So for 4 years straight, my husband was in the special operations helicopter unit, right? These are flying some of the most dangerous missions in the world. Meanwhile, I had just gotten out of the army and had a baby, and my exact area of expertise was how helicopter pilots die in Afghanistan, right? So this was very scary, right? So I spent 4 years. He's deployed 6 to 9 months a year, and it's very anxiety producing for me. So what I did is I asked myself, okay, what am I scared of? And then I made a plan, right? So what was I really scared of, right? Which is that black car is going to pull up to my house and those two people in uniform are going to get out and my whole world's going to go black, right? Okay, what does that mean? I have anywhere from a baby to a 4-year-old, right? Like I can't just fall apart.
Yeah, your world
So,
doesn't go black.
right, exactly.
And
So what
we
I,
tend to stop there and go,
yeah,
that would kill me.
right. And it wouldn't. So I worked out my system, right? I said, okay, I have 20 minutes. I can hold it together for 20 minutes. And in that time, I'm going to send 4 text messages and make 1 phone call. And that's going to get, my sister on her way, my childcare on their way, my finance people on their way, and my own support on their way. And like, then I can fall apart. And that's going to be my plan. And that's where my plan's going to end because guess what? Like, it didn't happen. Right? Like,
Right.
so
And you would have your support system there to help you make better decisions or
if it
whatever.
happened, and
Yeah.
there's nothing much more you can do to prepare yourself, right? As we've
Right.
talked about before, for like the worst case, right? Like in the military, it's like, our worst case is like, oh, they have missiles, right? If you're a helicopter intelligence officer, right? And it's like there's sometimes you be briefing them and you're just like, you'll know the worst thing when it happens to you. Like that's when we're all going to know together. Right. And in those moments, you're just going to have to respond.
Right. That
So
version
like,
of you will have more information about what's going on. So like trying to be that version of you sitting on your couch is
yeah.
really
And,
it's all
and
that brain.
and
Just
it's
brain
also
focus.
like, no matter how specific the plans you make are, to respond to these disasters, right? Like it's never going to be the way you think, right? It's never
Right.
going to be the way
When
you
has
think.
it ever
So
been?
like
Right.
what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
The other question that was funny, people are like, are you prepping? Are you buying food? Because there's this rumor that there's going to be a food shortage. And I'm like, oh, honeys. As though I
That's
didn't grow up in Latin America and I can't survive for basically ever on beans and rice and, like as though I haven't already assessed my life and have the reasonable amount of things that I need in case individually or whatever things go wrong. But like in a society ending disaster or society changing disaster, like you're just going to have to respond to it as it comes up, right?
they are
Nobody
just
needed all
so
that toilet
zombie.
paper during
They're
COVID.
just
Like
zombie
nobody needed
apocalypse
it.
coded at this point because
Yeah.
what is a prepper? You're buying things. What I see, and that's very white, but like what I see is people talking about like learning how to grow food and gardens and stuff and community. And like that, you should be talking about how you don't each need a whole house with prepper things and how long it's going to expire. You can't even, bleh. They just see
Right.
these movies written
Right.
by people like them that say, that apparently just all the internet and all capabilities just shut down. And I think what I'm realizing is that with the apocalypse, fan fiction is that there is the accountability looks different in an apocalypse. Like you
Right.
get to get away with no
It's
one
a
can hold you
world with
accountable.
no rules. It's a
Yeah.
world with no rules. And that's what people are looking forward to.
They already are in it. Like if you are a white man, why would you? And I've seen that in them. They're like, we love it. There's no cops on the road, no speed limits. A ticket? That was your big gripe in life, that you might get a ticket, you might get pulled over, because they're not saying you know, uh, I need white people to realize who's writing the things and like what are the morals of the story being told. And yeah, not every story is supposed to have a moral, but it does. Like they wrote it for a reason. They're telling you something, even if it's non impactful, not intellectual. Fast and Furious 76 is gonna have a moral to the story. I don't know what it's gonna be. Probably terrible. But you are still taking all those in with your precious time and energy. And if they're all written by white men who have a dream of a world where you gotta kill people that look like the people you love, or maybe were the people you love to save the people you love, we're going in a bad direction.
I think that's why people so either misunderstand or are so like entranced by what you and I do, because it's like we're just telling stories and like every story has a point. If it doesn't, why are you talking, right? But like
But
if a story doesn't have a point, why are you telling it? You know, there used to be these, I used to help soldiers with their resumes, right? So like veterans getting out of the military and trying to put stuff on their resumes. And some of these, so I would be like, okay, you got to get this like 11, your resume says that you were an 11B that did blah, blah, blah on the fob that did XYZ. And I'm like, no, but nobody can read this. You have to put that in civilian terms, right? And they will like very earnestly be like, well, ma'am, there's no like equivalent to what I did in civilian terms. And then I would very earnestly tell them back that, well, then it doesn't need to be on your resume, right? Like when I was in physical security,
so much of that.
when I was in physical security, there was a story on my resume about the coolest thing I did being helping to secure the airfield in Afghanistan for President Obama's arrival. Right? By the way, he locked me on the airfield on my birthday for 18 hours. Grr. But I got to meet him later, so it was cool. But like when I was in physical security, that story made a lot of sense on my resume. As soon as I switched over to like learning and development, like that story comes off my resume because that's not the coolest thing I did in my job anymore. Now it's all about, you know, how good I am at teaching adults things and how I was the intelligence officer in charge of briefing XYZ.
And that's
right?
what privilege is. But it's not a privilege. The privilege of them wanting to hire you, even though all the stories you told had nothing to do with the job. They just like you, and that was a cool story. And so they're like, sure. Meanwhile, if I go in there and I tell you all the stories, just like they're like, she just seems like that would be. And you don't realize it because you're going there saying, oh, look, all of this stuff. And they're just uncomfortable, probably because you have too much experience. But now you think you're just amazing at jobs. You're just so good at everything, even though the data don't say it. But like people keep telling you how great you are. I don't know. Yeah, community would do wonders. Like consequences. I don't know, man. Please.
It's very true. In my, you know, my next book that I'll write after this, Un-American, that I'll finish writing out, but I have this chapter called White Privilege. And, you know, this is the first time I hear the term white privilege, and we're deployed to Afghanistan. And there's this man who once was a good friend of mine, was like, again, literal 6'2", but now he's not too skinny anymore. So he's like 6'2", big, blonde, blue-eyed man, literally named Apollo. Okay, so you're gonna have that image in your head. And he was like very earnestly explaining how his career had always been successful, not because he had privilege, but just because he always had a bag packed and he was ready for everything. And like, that's why he got to go to Ranger School at the right time. And that's why he got to get this school and this Army badge. And then because of that, he would be picked for the next thing. And he's very earnestly explaining this to me. Who was at my last deployment, one of the first women on a ground combat team, trying to take down women being banned from doing these very things he talked about, right? Like I took the Ranger physical fitness test in officer school, and so did 5 other women, and we smoked it. And then they just laughed at us and told us we couldn't go because we were women. Right. So it was like, he's like very earnestly explaining that he's like, had no privilege, and it's just like you're just standing there looking at him like
that's like every white woman who's like, well, as a white woman with autism, it's been really tough to socially understand what's going on.
Every time I make a video telling people they need to kind of like calm down and walk through things and blah, 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 then I'll get like, well, okay, so as a disabled autistic person, what do you think? And I just start saying back, well, as a disabled autistic person, I'm watching this closely and I don't change my advice. You know, like
I can't like it's so, and so that's that kind of thing I was touching on before. It's like this exceptionalism where you are the exception because you have this other thing that isn't about whiteness. It's like, how do I, and I guess that maybe the bear thing did that, or if even saying black and white thinking, taking things into an everyday scenario and saying, no, see, you're not know what it is, but they're just like, yeah, white women, right? And I'm like, yeah. And I think we're on the same page. And then I make a video like, but even versus a white man, you're like a man, a woman, you're like, the thing you're saying conceptually is what you do conceptually. And then they're like, no. But no, me as a special kind of white person, autistic or gay or I'm trans or whatever, you're still white. Like, you're making it worse every time you say something because your whiteness just shows so loud, and it's in everything unspoken to you, invisible to you, right? And it's so someone was talking about they're talking about black and white thinking, and they said, oh, like white knight, like the white knight, that's an interesting one too. And I think about that as well. Also want to say this, knights in shining armor probably smelled so bad. Anyway, just
I
want to
thought
throw
you were
that in there.
talking about White Knight, which was what Jim Jones named his
Oh, that's
rehearsals and
interesting.
then
No,
eventual
no,
thing.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
white knight, like these knights that come and save you from something that they kind of created. That's like a whole theory. But someone responded to them. They said, well, I've never heard of white knight. I have heard of knight in shining armor. And I thought,
Yeah, but what
okay,
color
like,
did
why
you
would you
think that knight
comment that? They
was?
already said a phrase, you have never heard of it, and you just said, I never heard of that, but now you have. It's very confusing. Like,
I've
ignorance
started
doesn't make sense
I've
after you've
started
heard about
saying
it.
this to AA people, right? Because one thing a cult member will say as soon as you start talking about the negative stories of people who had experiences in their group, they'll be like, "Oh, well, I never heard about that." Okay, then why are you talking right now? Because I have collected thousands and thousands of stories from survivors, and I'm
Yeah.
very well versed in talking about this. So if you haven't even gone out and done the work to listen to people, like, it is not, you can post on any channel you like asking people if they've had negative experiences with AA, and you can have a following of 14 people and one of them is going to talk to you about it. Like, it's not hard to go
Holding your
find a
hands
negative story
over your eyes and being like, I don't see it that way. Like, yeah, I know. Yeah.
and here's something I just realized, right? I've been explaining to people privilege as like you can understand your privilege in the things you never noticed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And like my husband, when I started talking about how the bun, the requirement for military women to wear this perfect bun, had all of these repercussions, including that when you have to lie down in what's called the prone to shoot, so when you have to shoot from a lying down position, that bun pushes your helmet over your eyes, right? So it makes you like operationally ineffective. Oh, by the way, you have to shoot well twice a year to keep your job, right? So I started talking about this, and my husband goes, "What? You have to wear a bun and a helmet? Like, impossible, can't be done." And I just looked at him, and I was like, "Babe, you served for 20 years in the military with women the whole time. You have for sure been in charge of women shooting, and you don't understand this." So what I just realized earlier when you were talking, I was like, privilege is your ability not to notice, which is your blind spot, which is your blind spot, which in a threat assessment is bad, right? Like, the less privilege you have, the less blind spots you have, the more like you understand the world.
I said, like, the opposite of privilege is consideration, is thinking about these things, considering them. And to me, that has more. Seeing more texture. Texture is seen as bad in whiteness, right? Like,
and
a
even
blank
that,
canvas.
like consideration, right? When people literally say like, "Oh, I've never thought about myself as a as a white man or a white woman," because everyone else has thought about, like you said, like the black woman knows she's black, right? Like, she has considered that many times in her life. And like you have maybe never stopped and considered that you are a white person and what that means.
And what that means for you. And like, I was calling it, instead of white privilege, white ignorance or white entitlement. But I mean, people like entitlement. But to me, ignorance is also a weird word when you start thinking about it, because it's like you're ignoring something, but in order to ignore it, you have to acknowledge it exists. Like you can only be ignorant of something before you ignore it,
Yeah.
kind of. But either way, like the word kind of negates itself once you decide to be ignorant. I don't know, right? But you don't know stuff, and I'm telling you that doesn't help you. Like
Right.
that's not a privilege, in my opinion. But it's the privilege to sit on the pedestal. Pedestals aren't known to be comfortable.
I
But
always get this
okay.
one. I always get this one from people. They'd be like, because I'm trilingual. So when that comes up, often I'll get this kind of, not kind of, very ignorant response, right? Of, well, I don't need to know any other languages because everyone speaks English. And I'm like, great. That's an advantage to them. That's not an advantage to you.
One person speaks multiple languages. You speak one, and somehow you're smarter, better. Okay. Do you think that everyone else believes that? So that's where your privilege and ignorance come in. You're privileged in thinking, when I walk away, I just ate that. Like, I crushed it. And no one else agrees with you. But you get to go home, ignorance is bliss or something, and say, I totally gave it to these minorities. Right? And we all go home and go, oh my God, you can't even. He said, which side do you want to be on? I don't know. I'm good with my side.
The whole time you're saying this, I'm just picturing the white guy who's out there like dancing like this and then goes home and is like, yeah.
You should have seen it. They were all crowded around me. They were amazed by my moves. And meanwhile, we're just like, whoa.
Yeah. Go white guy. Go white boy.
I mean, we gonna have fun regardless. You show up all the time, and there's this sound that goes around. When you're Black, you're never really lonely because there's always a white person just there to make sure you're doing all right. We'd be happy if it wasn't, but you'd be surprised. They just show up in the back of people's videos. You do it to each other too. It's so weird. Your fun and your joy is like dehumanizing. I guess most of your games are like, how do you own people? Make little people move. Monopoly. I'm not going to do Monopoly again. But an acronym, technically an initialism, with AA. Because on TikTok, everyone's like, well, it's technically not an acronym. If it doesn't spell something, it's an initialism, like FBI. And if it spells something, it's an acronym. So AA, I have been stuck on accountability apocalypse, or apocalypse of accountability. Now, not necessarily for Alcoholics Anonymous, but people kind of related to that. And I do kind of feel like there is a level of, once you're sober, so that's another like an identifier for someone to other themselves from the general public, right? If they are anything that people want to listen to, they have a story of something, right? Now, to critique it is a problem.
Right. And this is why
Black people go to AA. I don't know.
I just made this video all about, someone was like, what's the problem with AA? So I was like, okay. And I just like walk through all my stuff. And it's like, just because you decided you're sober now doesn't mean your life being saved is the most important thing on earth. Like, and people did not like that comment, right? And I had to turn off comments. And I'm just like, we're all struggling. Like, we are all struggling, and just like just because you want to categorize it as a disease doesn't make you suddenly the most important person. Right. And this is what cults do, right? It gives you the right to put like yourself and your mission first. Yeah. And speaking of acronyms versus initialisms, I know we've said this one before, but I'm going to say it again. When the military needed an acronym for, I believe it's ammonium, for some kind of explosive. Like, let's just put it there. The acronym that they chose, that some general approved. You ready for it? ANAL. And then it was like the fun thing to do, not to tell lieutenants how it's pronounced. Right? Because then they will get up and brief about, sir, we recovered today 2 jugs of anal. And they just think it's so funny. And it's
the same group of what was it, Lickies and Chewies? Because I'm not forgetting that. I'm not forgetting that.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, another one that is going on right now. They just got rid of the separation between genders of like the physical fitness test. And they're like, ooh, how do you feel about it now, ladies? We're like, that y'all decided that you need a certain level of physical fitness to do this job. And that was different for men and women. And then y'all decided the different standards. Then y'all use those different standards to keep us out of the best jobs forever. And now you think we're scared if they're gone? I literally, military women out there, please have fun with this. Please. Like, I need videos of like a 4'8" woman just like smoking men and then just like walking up and being like, suck my D, Sergeant. Because, you know, they can do that now because they got rid of all the sexual harassment policies. But, you know, and another one was like, men decided that women must have access to running water every 3 days when they're on their periods. And then men wrote that down in a handbook. And then men used that to tell women that they couldn't be in these roles in the military, these combat roles, because they had to have access to running water every 3 days.
That's how they spend their time.
It just turns out that when a group of people can't do something, you don't have to make laws to keep them from doing it.
No.
I didn't have to
they just hate women.
I didn't have to make any rules that Mr. Knitting Cult Lady wasn't allowed to breastfeed the child. It just like didn't come up.
You know, I wonder about, so in the Black community, there's a lot of conversation, especially now about, well, as far as I'm concerned, about what we call DL men, right? So, and I feel like white people have the in the closet conversations. I don't know that. I think community-wise, it's very different. And like, I don't think coming out is a thing that anybody, like that's, I got lots of issues with all of that. But the DL men, I don't know if white people have language for that, but it's like the military is giving so much between the lickies and chewies and the ANAL. And
the language that we have for it is Grindr shutting down at the Republican National Convention because it was overrun.
Right. Like white women. So, and I think the conversation around DL men is usually had with black women need to know, right? Because that's a lot of how HIV is contracted with women, is that they're married to men who engage in unprotected sex.
Right.
And there are signs that Black women are sharing with each other to say this, lots of baby mamas, Elon Musk, right? Lots of baby mamas.
Yeah.
Likes ANL all the time. Hates women, right? But like wants them around all the time. That's like whiteness, right? It's a lot of this comes from a self-hatred, because of the caste system and all of that, and the phobias and all of it. But it turns people into terrible people to other people. You are harmful, and that is what we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And like in AA, it's like, no, you don't talk about the harm. So it's just interesting. Like,
and so literally in the military, like I was in my career was in between was when Don't Ask, Don't Tell came down, right? So I was there before and after. And they literally call it gay chicken, right? That like these men are like, you know, doing one gay thing and then the other guy does another gay thing and then another does a guy, and then they'll have a saying that'll be like, just go around and accidentally somebody in the ANAL, right? To win at gay chicken. And it was always very, very obvious to me that the reason they didn't want gay men in the military was because then you can't play all of your kind of like public homophobia, but really desiring games, right? It's like they don't want women there because we stopped the raping and the pillaging. Right. And they don't want gay men there because it was like, because the military is like your last sort of bastion of masculinity, right? And like, this was my ex-husband. Go listen to our episode 3, y'all. Like, this was my ex-husband. Openly a gay man, decides he wants to change that, right? Pump iron, go in the military, be rah, 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 marry Barbie. Nobody is ever gonna like suspect, right? So now you can just literally play all of your games. And like, Rebecca, when I tell you, like when you're in places, like when you're in officer school where like everyone, like the women and the men are all showering at the same time, right? And like the women are all just standing there in their towels, waiting for their turn to shower in front of everybody. Right? Like, it's awkward enough. We don't have to make it any worse. Meanwhile, the men are like, playing naked towel fights with each other and just having like this ridiculous game of basically like homoerotic, but let's put some violence and some pain in it. And then, in will walk the sergeant and start yelling at everyone. And now you're doing naked push-ups. So now this is like sexual violence being done to you. And like, this is what they think creates like the best team morale, right? This is
And
why
we
we
say,
can't have women and gay
thank
men
you for your
in
service.
to mess this up. And we say thank you for your service.
Right. We pay for this and say thank you for these
Yeah.
men to do this. I do think it is a conversation for white women to be having. Talk about narcissists. I think that it's gotten a little villainous and a little like you're not humanizing these men, and you need to for your protection, and maybe having these conversations about, are they DL? It's not
I know.
DL because
No.
that's black, but you need
I just started it now. Like, you want to come at me? I'm going to tell the public about your Jack Shacks. Like,
yeah. Yep. Ew,
maybe we leave it on that for today.
Yeah. Wow. Which I mean, between
but it's
like
because we've so deified the image of soldier, right? It's
Yeah.
like when y'all know what
Yep.
they're really like, right? Like,
Humanize
this is like
them.
we don't. This
Yep.
is like we don't talk about this outside the cult, But I've
Talk about
decided
it.
I'm talking about it. So
Oh, please. Just
there
like
we go.
And another way white people could talk about it. Did you know that? So the KKK started as an MLM. Sorry. And it was one, like there's whole tiers and everything. And I just want to tell you that multiple levels have the word Kleagle in it. Kleagle. It's a K, but it's Kleagle. There's a King Kleagle, there's a regular Kleagle, and there's an Imperial Kleagle or something. And they were boss babes. They were literally out there like busy business boys selling their hate for black people. But anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There we have it. No, there we have it.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody so much for hanging out with us today and listening to our conversations as we try to deconstruct the cult of white supremacy, like the cult that it is. Go check out Rebecca's stuff. Go specifically check out her stuff about black and white thinking. I was just revisiting that today and it is excellent. Yeah. Follow, like, and subscribe.
See you next time.
See you next time.